Welcome to GRE. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Being a person of value and building lasting relationships often comes down to self-disinterest, empathy, and connection. You're going to build not just your wealth mindset, but your skill set. It's milestone episode 400 today on Get Rich Education. GRE listeners can't stop talking about their service from Ridge Lending Group and MLS 42056. They've provided our tribe with more loans than anyone. They're truly a top lender for beginners and veterans. It's where I go to get my own loans for single-family rental property up to 4plexes. So start your pre-qualification and you can chat with President Chaley Ridge personally. They'll even deliver your custom plan for growing your real estate portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com. You know, a lot of investors choose either cash flow or home price appreciation, but one real estate market could provide both: Jacksonville, Florida. They've got 27% lower home prices and higher rents than the national median. Their market has appreciated 34% more than other comparable cash flow markets over the last 30 years. Get positive cash flow today and above average appreciation for tomorrow. They often have available inventory in Jacksonville, if you can believe that. Start at cashflowandgrowth.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from Cherry Hill, New Jersey to Cherry Springs, Dark Skies Park, Pennsylvania, and across 188 nations worldwide. You're listening to one of America's longest running and most listened to shows on real estate investing. That's our major, so to speak, with minors in economics and wealth mindset. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. You probably know that after 400 episodes. Today's guest doesn't often do podcast conversations like this, but GRE's Operations Lead here, Aundrea, introduced me to Miracle Morning author Hal Elrod last year. So Hal is standing by. And then a bonus as Aundrea joins me near the end of the show today as well. Yeah, so here on Milestone episode 400, there aren't any balloons falling out of the sky or anything. It's an opportunity to expand your thoughts and mindset and skill set in a different direction that should benefit you both within real estate investing and your broader life outside of it, from relationships with your real estate team to your spouse. In human relations, more than ever, people relate to you if you show yourself as vulnerable and even as a fallible person, more so than they do if one acts strictly like a stiff professional in a lot of circumstances. The best way to show others in a business relationship, especially people that you don't know very well, that you're a real and authentic human being and something that loosens up both of you and even make you all laugh together, is when you might go out of your way to point out that when you left home this morning, now you realize that you've got mismatched socks on, and you make some joke about that. It's something innocuous, yet everyone can relate to something like that. And then there's handling ego and criticism in a way that can make you endearing and empathetic. And by the way, the definition of empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. Now, we get overwhelmingly positive feedback and comments here about the show, and I am grateful to you for that, whether it's through Apple Podcasts reviews, or where you can always reach out if you've got a question or concern or suggestion at getricheducation.com/contact. Or now, increasingly, we get more and more comments from you on our Get Rich Education YouTube channel. There is a rather robust comment section there. And there is one popular video that we have over there. It has more than 100,000 views and a lot of likes and comments. And I was rather criticized for how I handled myself in this video. And that was an interview over there. And now it was the type of video that crossed over. It didn't bring out our usual core real estate investor crowd. It was kind of a hybrid crowd of geography and demography and real estate. And again, we get overwhelmingly positive feedback here, but the nice remarks, that's not where you get the lessons. So on this particular video, I got dozens of critical comments, and these comments, they were clearly objecting to the way that I handled the interview. I wasn't the guest, I was the host. And the comments, they were rather disparate. Some said that I brought no value to that interview. I was the host here with a fairly prominent guest. Others said that I talked too much, and yet some said that I talked too little. And it just seemed like I couldn't do anything right with that crowd, at least judging from the comments. Now, one way that I could have handled this is just set a policy around here that says, well, any negative comments, well, they just have to be deleted. We could have deleted them all. Well, I don't want to do that. It's okay if you disagree sometimes. In fact, some say that disagreement is actually the starting line, the starting point of a great conversation. We could go in there also and reply and tell the commenter that they're being dumb, or we could say something else disparaging back to the commenter. But, here's how I handled it once I learned about this. I went into the YouTube comments myself. I read a bunch of the criticism, and I made individual responses to a bunch of them. And my response to these dissenting commenters was something like this. Hey, thanks for the feedback. Other people seem to take exception to this material too. It is probably in my best interest to read all these comments and see what I can learn from this. And I've got to do better next time. I have clearly disappointed a lot of people here. That's it. That was my response. It was something like that. It wasn't that exactly. Now, what did that do? It appeared to engender empathy, really. Some of the detracting commenters, then they came back to me and said, oh, you know what? That wasn't so bad. I don't think there's that much that you need to change. I still learned a lot from your video. So see, when I showed the world that I'm listening and that I'm a fallible human being, just like we all are, sometimes it makes that critic come back and sort of repent or even reconsider, be contrite, show remorse. Next week here on the show, international man Doug Casey and I are going to discuss economics and what he thinks the prospects of entering what he calls the Greater Depression are. Today, Hal Elrod and I on how you can be a person of value and build meaningful relationships. I'd like to welcome a returning guest to the show. He has what is really a breathtaking story, which he told here last time, where he recovered from near-death experiences more than once. It's difficult to brush over something that profound. He's the author of the Miracle Morning book series. It's been translated into 27 languages, and now it has more than 500,000 people actually practicing it around the world. And his latest project is the Miracle Morning movie, which we hope to hear more about before we're done here. Front Row Foundation called him one of the most entertaining, authentic, and engaging speakers in the world. I'd like to welcome back to GRE, the man that turns the impossible into the inevitable, Hal Elrod.
Keith, my friend, thank you for the intro, brother. It's great to be here.
Oh, it's so good to have you back. Real estate is very much a relationship business, and we can think about building our relationships in the real world or increasingly building them virtually. Hal, why don't you tell us about what's important when it comes to optimizing your most important relationships, not just in real estate investing, but also outside of that in one's life overall?
There's a philosophy that I adopted a long time ago, and it was stop worrying about trying to impress people and instead just focus on how you can add value to their lives. And I think growing up, right, we're conditioned to want to impress other people. We want to look good, and it doesn't really go away. We just become big overgrown kids, right? We're still worrying what other people think of us and trying to look good for them and impress them. And sometimes that means embellishing a little bit to try to appear as more than we are. I found that what people are attracted to is the humanity in other people. So for me, there's really two rules to relationships. One is authenticity, and the second is value add, or adding value. So in other words, give up trying to be perfect for being authentic, right? So instead of trying to impress people, focus on how you can just be yourself, add value to their lives. And that's the second piece, is the adding of value, is that the more value you add for another human being, the more valuable you become. For me, that's inquiry. It's what's important to this person, finding out what matters to them, whether it's family, real estate, or a charity, whatever is important to them, and then finding ways that I can add value. But for me, it's a mindset where most of us are conditioned to want to get the most out of every situation. And I'm talking about flipping that. And you go, how can I give the most into every situation? And when you're trying to get the most out of every situation, it's stressful because you're making sure, am I getting my share? But when you give the most, it's liberating. When you're trying to give the most, add the most value that you can. So to me, that's the two things. Stop trying to impress people. Just be yourself, be authentic, and focus on adding as much value to their life as you possibly can.
When you give, oftentimes that person that you've given to feels a sense of reciprocation. And
Sure.
if you don't feel that back a couple times, maybe you start wondering whether or not that's a relationship worth building or not. People are liked when that other person feels some authenticity. To your point, Hal, I think oftentimes, yes, we do try to impress people. We all have egos. Some are just bigger than others. When it comes to building relationships with people, being professional, that's great and that's good in some contexts. But really, I think being relatable is more important in relationship building.
Totally. And you don't want to be a whiny when it comes to being authentic or being vulnerable. And those are two synonyms to me, being authentic, being vulnerable. There's a great quote from Robin Sharma, best-selling author. He said, when you're vulnerable with people, they fall in love with you. When you're vulnerable with people, they fall in love with you, right? And that's the thing is when you're trying to impress someone, unless they're a moron, they can sense that, right? Like they pick up on that and it's usually a turnoff. But if you're just completely authentic, completely yourself, you're not trying to impress them, you're just being who you are. Let me share an important distinction between worrying what people think about you and caring about what people think about you, because there's a subtle distinction, but the impact's very significant. So worrying what other people think of you is coming from a place of fear, right? Fear that I'm not good enough, fear that they're not going to like me, fear that the relationship's not going to develop the way I want it to. And when you worry, when you come from a place of fear, it creates insecurity, it creates stress, it hurts your self-confidence. You're worrying, you're coming from a place of fear. Caring what other people think of you, on the other hand, is coming from a place of love. It prompts you to be kind and thoughtful and considerate and generous. So while it might seem like a subtle difference, because both of them, you're thinking of the other person and what they think of you, but worrying is coming from a place of fear, caring is from a place of love. And again, the difference it makes, the impact is stress, fear, and insecurity versus thoughtfulness, kindness, generosity. And so, yes, you should care about your relationships, but come from a place of love when you're looking at how you can add value to that person's life. Not afraid they won't like you, but simply caring about how can you make their life better. And if that's where you're coming from, you can't help but develop great relationships.
It's so interesting that you say this, Hal. I think a common saying that one sees out there is, you shouldn't care about what other people think. You really shouldn't care. I think people really do care. For some reason, they're afraid to say that and actually be vulnerable. To your point, you should care about what other people think of you because that's your reputation.
Yeah. And there's, it's interesting. When I was probably about 25 years old, I got inspired one night. I was really focused on my personal growth and reflection and introspection. And I got inspired one night and I emailed roughly 20, I think it was 23, just because that was my favorite number back in the day because of Michael Jordan. I emailed 23 people and asked them for critical feedback on me. And I emailed those that were really close to me, like my mom and dad and my sister, my family. I emailed my colleagues. I emailed my close friends. I also emailed, though, upper management in my company, people that I didn't have good relationships with. I also emailed ex-girlfriends, believe it or not. I thought they would shoot me straight, right? And in the email, I said, I want to grow and I know I have blind spots. I know there are things you see about me that I don't see about myself. And so I need your feedback in order to grow. And so you won't hurt my feelings. Please be completely honest. And I said, and if you want to tell me things you like about me to feel balanced, that's okay, right? Funny part is it definitely hurt my feelings. I thought that it would. I thought it was fine with it. But I was like, because here's what happened. I would read things and I would go, that's not true. That's not me. But here's what I found. And this is really to capitalize or follow up on what you said about caring what other people think. I don't know about you, but I think it's true for all of us. We want to be known for who we are. And I have certain values, as most of us do. We all have things that we value, right? If you value your integrity, or you value your honesty, or you value that you're a thoughtful person. And then if the feedback you get from people, if they see you as, I feel like you're not a good listener, you're totally self-absorbed, all you care about is yourself, right? Like that type of feedback. If that's not in alignment with how you view yourself, so at first I got really defensive and I went, obviously they don't know me if they think that.
Right.
But then here's what I realized. I got more introspective and I went, wait a minute. If they see me that way, that means I'm not portraying I'm not living in alignment with my values, because I see that I care about other people, but their interactions with me are not in alignment with that. It was a huge, and I encourage everybody to do this. In fact, in my book, The Miracle Morning, this is the bonus chapter. It's called The Email That Will Change Your Life. And I actually put the word for word email in that book so that people could copy paste it and, as a template to send that email out to their friends and family. And I've received, of course, many emails from people telling me that was a scary email to send, but that it was once they hit send and got the feedback, it was transformative. The point is, it is important that other people and what they think of us is feedback. It's a reflection of how we are showing up in the world. And I would say for all of us, we want to show up in alignment with who we see ourselves to be and how we want to be perceived by other people.
Yes, that must have been difficult to ask for the unvarnished truth from your network, even ex-girlfriends. And then once you get the unvarnished truth, you're a little bit resentful that they shared that with you. You bring up so many good points there. Change really begins from within. In fact, I'm reminded of this one comic strip. Okay, this comic strip only has 2 frames to it. In the first frame of the comic strip, there's a speaker in the front of the room speaking to 10 people. And that speaker says, "Who wants change?" And all 10 people are raising their hand high, really enthusiastically. They all want change. And then in the second frame of the comic strip, the speaker is in front of the room, in front of those same 10 people. And then he says, "Who wants to change?" And no one's got their hand up. No one wants to change, but yet everyone wants change.
I love it.
And it really goes back to Gandhi. Be the change that you want to see in the world. It really begins with you. So a lot of times we can't really change who we are quickly, but the one thing we can quickly change is how we respond to that.
We can change how we show up, how we treat other people. I know that we'll probably get into affirmations, but I'll crack that door open, which is for me, the Miracle Morning is my daily practice. It became a book. It's made up of these 6 practices that are the SAVERS, SAVERS. It's silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. The A is for affirmations. Affirmations, I believe, are the most effective tool for personal transformation. I believe they're also the most misunderstood tool for personal transformation, often the most undervalued, because I don't know about you, but I grew up in the 90s where they had that Saturday Night Live character, Stuart Smalley, and his show, the satire show, right? Affirmations with Stuart Smalley. And he would look in the mirror at himself and he would, in a really funny lisp, voice, he would say, "I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me," right? It really made a mockery of affirmations. And then the way we've been taught affirmations by self-help gurus over the years are often counterproductive. It's either lie to yourself, just tell yourself you are something that you want to be until you believe it. But the truth will always prevail. If you say, "I'm a millionaire," you're struggling financially, the truth is going to shine through. You're going to go affirm, "I am blank." But if that's not in alignment with who you see yourself to be, you're going to reject it. You're going to resist it. The other way we're taught affirmations is to promise this flowery, magical result. "I am a money magnet. Money flows to me effortlessly and in abundance," right? That affirmation might make you feel good in the moment because you're lying to yourself and telling yourself that money is going to magically appear, but it's not helping you. So for me, affirmations, I use them to enhance my relationships among virtually every area of my life. But I have affirmations for my relationship with my wife, for my relationship with both of my kids, to optimize my relationship with my community, with colleagues, you name it. And it affirms who I'm committed to being. I can't control other people's perception. I'm not responsible for their experience of me. I can't control their experience. The only experience I'm responsible for is my own. And so for me, it's, am I living in alignment with my values? Values such as generosity, selflessness, contribution, right? These values that really are what foster deep, meaningful relationships, care, concern, empathy, right? These values. And the thing is, I struggle with a lot of those. I'm a terrible listener. Like if I'm being really honest, I don't affirm that every day, right? I'm affirming being a better listener. But as you can tell, often in like interviews, it shows up. I get excited. I get on a tangent or a concept, right? And the interviewer will ask me a question. You can test to this. And maybe they're expecting like a 1 or 2 minute answer. And then I talk for like 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes, right? But the point is that also shows up in personal conversations. It's like a conscious incompetence where I'll be talking to somebody over coffee or whatever. And all of a sudden I'll realize they asked me a question like 20 minutes ago and I'm still talking and I haven't asked them anything about themselves, right? But the point is utilizing affirmations to help direct your thoughts, your words, and your behavior to be in alignment with who you are committed to being to optimize your relationships. So if you know, I'm not a great listener, I'm not really empathetic naturally, then it's simply articulating words that keep top of mind how you want to think, how you want to speak, how you want to show up in the most important relationships in your life. And of course, for me, that starts at home with my wife and my kids, but then it branches out to the other people in my life.
Yeah, you are a great family guy. A lot of this begins at home, and you're already halfway there. If you, the listener, can tell, Hal's already willing to admit, for example, that he says he's not a good listener. Well, I think he's already halfway there. If he's willing to admit that, I mean, part of solving any problem is first identifying that there is one. We know that Hal is halfway there just with that. And Hal, a lot of times, you talk about your wife and kids at home, and I think it's so easy for us with whatever we're into, with all the work that you do, or with us as real estate investors, for us to get interested kind of in our own goals and our own, this sort of innate selfishness. For example, maybe I want to own 10 properties in 3 states by the end of next year, and I'm just focused on doing that. And I'm so focused on me that I don't even spend that much time with my wife. Or do you have some things around affirmations there that help you optimize those relationships at home?
The first time I ever identified my purpose in life, I was probably 27 years old-ish. I read a book called Love is the Killer App, APP, as in short for application. And basically it's saying love is the most important application in business. That's kind of what the title meant. It was by Tim Sanders, who's the former COO of Yahoo. The whole book was about developing relationships. It was about love not being talked about in business context. But he was saying, no, that's if you want to separate yourself from your competitors, put love at the forefront of how you engage with your colleagues, with your employees, with your customers, with your clients. He said, because that will differentiate you. Everybody else is focused on the bottom line. They're focused on getting the most they can out of every deal. When you come from a place of love, he said, that's the core human emotion, right? That is the core human value is love. We want to be loved. We want to feel loved. We want to give love. We want to receive love, so on and so forth. And he really talked about adding value. That's where that concept really got ingrained for me. I defined my purpose in life. First, it was to add value to every person I meet. That was the first iteration that I wrote down. My purpose in life is to add value to every person I meet. It goes along the lines with Zig Ziglar's quote, you can have everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want.
Yeah.
So that was the theme. I thought, okay, if I focus on adding as much value as I possibly can, if that's my number one priority, my driving intention, my highest priority in every relationship, I thought I'm going to become a person of value. People are going to, maybe not at first, because back then one of the feedback points I got was that I was selfish, that I was all focused about Hal. That was one of the feedback points I got when I sent that email. I think that probably also played into, okay, this is an opportunity for me to shift that and make it about how can I help other people and not try to get the most out of every situation as it benefits me. I quickly added the word selflessly. So my purpose became to selflessly add value. And here's why. What I found is I would catch myself adding value only when I felt like it, only when it was convenient for me, which was really still another form of being selfish, right? Like it was better. Yes, I'm being selfless, but only when it's selfishly what I want to do, right? I decided I wanted my intention to be pure, to selflessly add value to the lives of other people, regardless of whether or not I felt like it, regardless of whether or not I was in the mood, whether or not I had the energy. And so maybe a day or two after I set that purpose, I got a phone call from a friend of mine. He had been going through a really difficult time and we weren't that close. Like we used to be roommates. We were like buddies, but not like a best friend. And he had been diagnosed bipolar. And so talking to him could be extremely draining. He was usually complaining the whole time. He was hard to follow. He was all over the place. It was usually not a pleasant experience. And I was driving to a sales appointment and he called. And normally when he had called in recent months, I was like, I would ignore it, let him go to voicemail, maybe send him a nice text. I was trying to minimize, I was protecting my own kind of emotional well-being. So I'd minimize how much I talked to him. I looked at the phone, saw it was him, put the phone back down. And then I had just written my purpose to selflessly, not about me, it's about the other person, to selflessly add value. And I went, son of a bitch, I got to live in alignment with my purpose. He's calling me because he obviously wants to talk to me. It's not about me. That was my mantra around that purpose. It's not about me. It's about how can I serve the person in front of me? And so I went, it's not about me. He needs me. And I picked up the phone, mustered up some energy. Hey, how's it going, buddy? We have a conversation and it goes really well. I gave him some advice. That year, I committed that I would selflessly add value to every person I could. And I stretched myself thin. I led a team of 20 other people, my fellow sales reps. I wasn't paid. I was just trying to help them, support them in any way that I could. And I was going for my biggest year ever. So in the grand scheme, I ended up reaching my goal. I ended up having all these amazing, miraculous things happen where whenever I would selflessly add value and sacrifice what in the moment seemed like what I should do for my best interest, it always came back tenfold. That gentleman, my friend, I saw him a couple years later and we talked occasionally during that time, but he came to an event that I hosted and he pulled me aside. He said, Hal, hey man, I wanted to tell you something. You probably don't remember this. I called you one day a couple of years ago and he said, you answered the phone. And he said, you didn't know this, but I was suicidal and I was planning on killing myself that day.
Wow.
And he said, your phone call gave me hope. And I decided that I was never going to take my life because of what you said. I said, you have no idea, Alex, how much that means to me. I will never forget that phone call because that phone call was the first opportunity that I had to live my purpose. I told him and we hugged and embraced. From that moment on, I decided I will continue to live that purpose. And for me, it showed up in so many ways. I selflessly added value for that team of 20 people. Well, when my book, Miracle Morning, came out, the company that I led that team for, and I never asked for anything, they called me and said, hey, we want to order 500 copies of your book to give out. You've done so much for our organization, right? And so it's not doing it with the intention of, this will come back to me. But I think that there's nothing wrong with being selfishly selfless where you go, look, if I'm a person that adds value at every turn, it's going to come back. People are going to reciprocate it. But the difference is you're playing the long game. You're looking at the big picture. You're not keeping score for every person, every interaction. You're just going, this is who I am. I'm a person who adds as much value to the lives of every person that I possibly can. Because that's the way to live. If we all do that, the world's a totally different place. And then it's okay to know in the back of your mind that I bet that some of those interactions, nothing's going to come back to me. That's fine. But I bet some of those interactions, it's inevitable. They're going to come back to you in ways you never could have expected that, again, are going to probably pay for itself. The ROI for being that type of person that's not trying to get as much as you can in every situation, but you're trying to give as much as you can in every situation. I found in my experience, and even just theoretically, it makes sense, that is the most beneficial way to build relationships.
Yeah, there's no math on that ROI. That's an amazing story. By leading with giving and caring about others, you could have very well saved a life in that circumstance. And one thing I've done, Hal, again, I'm not keeping score, I'm not tallying marks or anything, but anecdotally, I've noticed throughout life, we're talking about how everyone's favorite subject is themselves. If I get in a relationship with someone and in a conversation, I'm using the word you more than I, that means I'm talking about the other person more than I am myself. If I can use you more than I'm probably really interested in that person. And, oftentimes I think, boy, why did I have such a great time talking with Keith or talking with Hal? Probably because we let them talk about themselves, which is everyone's favorite subject. And that's just really a great way I found to relationship build. You're listening to GRE. Our guest is Miracle Morning author Hal Elrod. More when we come back. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. For accredited investors, if you've ever wanted 10 to 12% passive income returns, Wagner and Alasko and his professional partners could have the right answer for you. With real estate, one of the safest assets available on the planet, on a preferred return basis, you collect your money before anyone else does. I encourage you, go ahead, learn more about their opportunities at I'mAccredited.com or text 305-684-2222 for your free investment guide. Hey, my friend Damian Lupo informed me that checkbook IRAs have been made illegal by the U.S. tax court. If you have a checkbook IRA, your holdings are now disqualified with taxes and penalties up to 50%. But don't panic, Damian and the EQRP company can fix this. Those IRAs can be converted into EQRPs retroactive to last year, getting those tax deductions and reducing your taxable income. In this way, you can invest your 401k or IRA in real estate, Bitcoin, gold, and even your own business. So whether you're a full-time investor or retired or even a dentist with dozens of employees, if you're listening, you qualify, the EQRP works. It's a solution. You'll control your money, kill UBIT, and pay way less taxes. To learn more about this strategy and free up your retirement money, get the newest EQRP special report. Text GRE to 307-213-3475. That's text GRE to 307-213-3475.
This is Norada Real Estate's Marco Santarelli. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold and don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to GRE. We're on a special episode number 400 where we're talking about mindset and relationship building and being a connector with Miracle Morning author Hal Elrod. You can learn more about his revolutionary books and his movie. You can learn about that all at miraclemorning.com. Hal, we talk about leading with giving. Sometimes in today's world, I like to think through the lens of the sharing economy, maybe more so than the competitive economy, and everyone's out to get me. Why don't we talk about the value of being a connector, whether that's connecting your real estate provider with your lender or connecting your tax strategist to your bookkeeper or just connecting a former coworker to a neighbor in your neighborhood. Talk about the value of being a connector and how that really benefits everybody.
Yeah, well, it goes back to what I talked about earlier, right? Which is connecting one person to another who can add value. That is a form of value add, right? You're adding value by connecting two people. For me, I'm just always trying to keep my antenna up as I'm listening. Who do I know that can help this person, or who do I know that this person can help, right? Who do I know that is a good fit? And for me, and I really learned this from Joe Polish. Joe Polish, founder of Genius Network, he is and he's also the co-author of the Miracle Morning for Addiction Recovery, but he's one of the best connectors in the world. And what he does, and I learned this from him, is whenever he's with somebody and he's always thinking, who do I know in my network that can help this person? That's literally like the driving question for Joe. And then as soon as he thinks of that person, he will immediately record a video or an audio text for that person. So I'll get a video from Joe and go, hey, Hal, I'm here with so-and-so, and I thought of you because you guys both have this thing in common where you can help each other. He'll text it between the two of us, right? So I'm introducing you guys here. You guys can connect on the text. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help. Take it away, whatever, right? That is a simple form of adding value where you literally do very little. All you have to do is send the text. And again, I do that even, a book, a podcast, a resource, any way that I can connect that person with another resource, be it another human being, again, or a book or a podcast or a product, whatever it is. Just always doing it and doing it in real time so that it doesn't get added to your to-do list. It doesn't get forgotten, but it gets done right there on the spot. It only takes a couple of minutes of your time.
Tell us more about giving, because being a connector is really giving. And some people fear using up their greatest resource of their time and their connections in making that connection, because sometimes, again, I think a lot of people come back to, what's really in it for me if I connect these two people?
When it comes to giving, I have to ask you, have you interviewed John Ruhlin, the author of Giftology?
I have not.
Okay, so make a note to, speaking of connecting two people, I'm going to connect you and John Ruhlin. Yeah, so John Ruhlin's one of my closest friends. He is the author of Giftology, and his expertise is in gifting, in gift giving, how to give gifts that make a lasting impact so that the person that receives the gift is always thinking about the person that gave them the gift. We actually met together selling Cutco, and John took Cutco, which we would sell to homemakers, people at home that were cooking for their family. Yeah, high quality kitchen cutlery. And John started getting corporate clients, and he would engrave the knives with some form of message so that the person using the knife, every time they pulled that knife out of the block, it had something that reminded them, engraved on it, of the person that gave the gift. I'll give you an example. Robert Kiyosaki had me on his show, Rich Dad Radio, and Robert also allowed me to come out and film him for the Miracle Morning movie. So I called John Rule and I said, hey, what do you think we should get Robert? What's a good gift? And we sent Robert a $2,000 set of Cutco, and John had the brilliant idea, and I've since duplicated this idea, but we looked up Robert Kiyosaki quotes from his books, and every single knife was engraved with a different Robert Kiyosaki quote.
How cool.
Right? Talk about making an impact. And I did that again with James Altucher and other folks. But John's point is that part of your budget, whether it's your marketing budget, should be in getting gifts. When I sold Cutco, almost 50% of my customers were real estate agents, real estate investors, or brokers. So they would give the gift to their client at closing instead of like a bottle of wine, which gets drinking and forgotten, or a gift card, which gets spent and forgotten. They would get not a $2,000 set of Cutco, but maybe a $100 or $200 set of Cutco, depending on the sell. But they would engrave it with, hey, if you ever need anything, you can reach me here. They would literally put their own phone number on it, here at your service or whatever. But then you think about it, most people say they don't buy real estate from the same realtor because they forget their name. They forget, I don't know who my realtor was. I haven't seen him for 3 years. I forgot their name. I don't have their business card anymore. But their info's on that knife in my drawer, right? It's giving gifts to people that they're going to use on a daily basis and that reminds them of you, the gift giver. And John's moved beyond Cutco. He'll give these $20,000 art pieces where it's like a portrait of the family, of the person getting the gift, and all sorts of, he does, mugs and all sorts of different really, really cool gifts. So when it comes to giving, you can give your time, you can donate money to a cause, you can give really nice gifts, you can connect other people, right? There's a lot. And Giftology, of course, that book talks about here's all the different ways to give a gift that really makes a lasting impression. And then, like you said, Keith, it engages the law of reciprocity. So the person receiving the gift, just naturally, when somebody gives to us, we feel inclined to give back to them.
Well, with that in mind, once we're done with the show here, I now have a podcast where I can introduce you over there to that show where maybe you can get your message out some more now, Hal, in reciprocating for the connection that you're making for me. So, are there any last thoughts when it comes to relationship building in real estate, or even with things that transcend real estate and helping us relate to other people?
You have to schedule it, put it in your schedule, right? If it's not in your schedule, it's probably not going to get done. So a lot of what I talked about was really around shifting your mindset and your values, where you go, okay, instead of trying to get the most at every situation, I'm going to focus on how I can give the most in every situation. Instead of focusing on how I can extract value from every interaction, I'm going to focus on how I can add value as much as I possibly can. That's a great mindset. But if you don't have time in your schedule where you're actually thinking, how can I add value for these people, then it's probably going to fall by the wayside and you're not going to do it. I used to have scheduled an hour in my schedule every week where I would look back at who were my customers this week, my clients this week, who did I interact with? And the question was, how can I add value to the most important relationships in my life? And it was in a professional setting, right? My wife was separate, kids are separate. That's a daily thing. But every week I would schedule an hour to focus on how I could add value. It might be writing thank you notes. It might be giving gifts to my best clients, or even just planning quarterly gifts or planning for the future. What am I going to do this year to really honor my most important clients? So put that time in your schedule, and you can call it adding value or giving or whatever you want to call the time. But the point of it is that you're being intentional, being thoughtful, being strategic, investing time in nurturing your most important relationships. Like with John Rulin, my author of Giftology, my buddy, who I know I've name dropped a few times here, he teaches you in the book how to automate your gift giving, which is like you eventually get to the point where everything's automated. So if I need a gift, like with John, I just send an email to his assistant. Hey, here's who I need the gift for. Here's my budget. And then they'll come back with, here's the options, and for the most part, we've done it now. So I already know what the options are. I know what we're going to get them. I'll say, hey, let's get this set of Cutco for this person, or this custom made engraved mug for this person, right? So it's already automated essentially, or close to it, for all the gifts that I need to give.
We'll leave that resource in the show notes for you, the listener, the viewer here. Yeah, if you start to change your mindset and begin to be a giver in a relationship, you'll no longer be extracting value from that person rather than giving it. If you're just extracting value from them, you're kind of adding a tax into their life. And if you're adding value into that relationship and being a giver, you're helping them grow compound interest in a sense. They're going to know they're getting value from being around you, and you're just being a good person, and you're happy about how you've left that relationship and added value to the world, and how you certainly added value to us and our audience today. So if people want to learn more about you, whether it's your transcendent series of Miracle Morning books or your new Miracle Morning movie, tell us about it.
Yeah, head over to miraclemorning.com. The Miracle Morning, you mentioned the series. There's roughly a dozen books, give or take. Miracle Morning for real estate agents. We don't have real estate investors yet. That's one at some point, maybe in the future. But the original Miracle Morning book, you can get on Amazon or go to miraclemorning.com and find it there. And then the Miracle Morning movie is a 90-minute documentary that shows the morning routines of some of the world's most successful people. So from Robert Kiyosaki's in the movie, Mel Robbins, author of the 5-Second Rules in the movie, Lewis Howes, New York Times bestselling author, Brendan Burchard, on and on and on. And then it's a really inspiring film that shows how people around the world are transforming their lives one morning at a time. And everything you can find in the Miracle Morning ecosystem is at miraclemorning.com.
Miraclemorning.com. It's certainly been valuable. Hal Elrod, thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate you, man.
We got more here on episode 400. I'm here with our operations lead, Aundrea Newbern. She is my right-hand person here at GRE, and she's got the cred in two ways. She's got the credibility because she's an active real estate investor, and she's also got the credentials because she has her MBA. Hey, welcome onto the show here, Aundrea, for episode 400.
I see what you did there, Keith. Thank you for the introduction. Glad to be back.
Oh, so clever. Yeah. What are your thoughts about Hal and I's chat?
I enjoyed it. So as you know, I have been a longtime follower of Hal. So I've read several of his books, listened to his podcast, really enjoy kind of his content that he has around mindset, particularly. He dropped some things that I've heard before and I've read before, and then he dropped a few things that I hadn't thought of before. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Tell me what some of your takeaways were.
The one thing that stuck with me that I had not necessarily thought of before was keeping words top of mind to show how you want to think and how you want to show up. Thinking of my interactions in real estate investing specifically, there's a lot of times where you will come into a situation where you're trying to purchase a home or sell a home or any type of transaction related to real estate where you need to be able to relate to that person. Especially in today's market as a real estate investor and buyer of real estate, it's very hard for us to buy. There's a lot of competition out there. Sellers really just have kind of their choice of who they want to purchase and who they want to sell to. So it's a little bit harder. He said during the interview that stuck with me was there are a lot of people out there who may not be an empathetic person. And so if you're not a super empathetic person, and I think a lot of times as real estate investors, we're very analytical. And so bringing the empathy into it sometimes may be harder than for the average person. He said, keeping certain words and actions top of mind that can help you demonstrate that you are empathetic, even though you're thinking critically and maybe analytically. That stuck with me because I often run into that myself where I'm having to kind of take a step back, not just look at the numbers, look at how I can connect with someone and how I can be empathetic to a situation in order to make it a win-win. And he did a really good job talking through this.
Do you have any particular words or situations that help you be empathetic? Because I've been in the situation before where in a competitive market, and we're still in a competitive market, even though I think it's cooled down somewhat now, where I have had people say that we would rather sell the property to Keith rather than this other person, all things considered equal, because we just sort of want him to have the property.
One of the bigger things that I've kind of run into is people saying, I don't want to sell the property to you. I'd rather sell it to someone who's actually going to live in this home and their family's going to be here and, they're going to make it their own rather than you real estate investor over here. What I try to do is kind of put myself in the shoes of people that think this way because I understand that why they feel this way. But what I try to kind of bring to them is, hey, a lot of people can't afford to buy a home like this. So there are a lot of people that can afford to rent, but they don't have the credit, they don't have the assets, they don't have the means to be able to purchase this home. So with me purchasing it as a real estate investor, while I understand your point of view and how you feel like that, I'm now able to offer this home to someone who couldn't purchase it. And now they have nice, clean, affordable housing that they can live in. And they wouldn't have been able to do that if you wouldn't sell this to me and you sold it to an owner occupied.
Right. Okay. So you're the one that's enabling this transaction to happen and ultimately helping someone else. And that might be a tenant. What are your other takeaways from listening to Hal and I's chat?
The other thing he talked about was, while we're all, I think, or at least a lot of us are in real estate investing for financial freedom and to be able to be free, that's not really all we should be in it for. And part of it is making sure that you are giving back and that you're coming from a place of love. For me, I think maybe thinking of it, giving back is easy. Maybe coming from a place of love. How do I do that? I'm a real estate investor. Like, how do I bring love into the transaction? Right. But he made such a great point that that is the core human emotion. And that is a lot of value if you can come from a place of love and bring that into the transaction. So that kind of stuck with me. I've never really thought about it that way.
Most people don't think it through that way either. Any last thoughts that you had?
Yes. One thing that he mentioned that I think may perhaps be one of the most critical things is being a connector. So not everybody does this naturally. But if you take everything he said and think, okay, maybe I can't do a lot of these things, or it just doesn't come to me naturally, even if you're analytical, even if you're a numbers person, the one thing you can do is provide value by connecting people. I may know someone that's written a book, or maybe is a thought leader in a certain place, or maybe I know they're just looking to sell properties. Being able to connect to people and give back in that manner is something that people who are a little bit less empathetic, perhaps, and more analytical can do easily.
Sure. Maybe if, say, Aundrea makes one connection between two other parties, you're thinking, yeah, well, what's in it for Aundrea? But if Aundrea does that time after time, you got to think about how that positions her and how that she's now perceived as a person of value to the one that's making the connections and just really helping out and really, again, coming from a place of love.
That's exactly right. You got it.
Aundrea, well, thanks so much for your input here and listening in, kind of like a fly on the wall to Hal and I's interview. You did indeed introduce he and I after all. So see, you were the connector yourself there. So for Aundrea Newbern here on episode 400, we'll be back next week with Doug Casey talking about economics. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your day drain.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.